Welcome back. It is that time on Saturday night. It is power rankings time. So, from myself and from Shadow here. Hey, here you go. I petted the cat. How you doing, Shadow? He's a happy cat. Hopefully, happy people watching this too, and it stays that way throughout the power ranking. So, there has been some movement at the bottom of the board. Very often there hasn't been so far this year, but we're going to get into this. So, at number 32, dropping one spot from last week, Chicago. The Chicago Blackhawks right now are at the bottom. And what's interesting to me is that, I thought Anaheim was going to stay in the bottom for the season. It felt like, yeah, Anaheim, this is just their spot. At some point, probably during Christmas break, I could do a video where I do the average for the power rankings so far this year, because that's always an interesting video to do. I will be doing a regular power rankings next Saturday, which of course is on Christmas Eve. The nice thing is, because it's on Christmas Eve, I can do it early in the day. I can do it in the morning, and then, just everybody can be angry at me for Christmas. So that'll work. But Chicago's number 32. I don't think people are going to be too angry with that placement. Number 31, dropping two spots from last week, is Philly. So the Philadelphia Flyers have, in a roundabout way, done the same thing this year they did last year. The difference is, last season, they weren't expected to be as bad as they were, and this season they were expected to be worse than where they started, and now they're right where we kind of expected them to be. So I figured use the gritty puck, because why not? I almost said magnet, but why not? Because, I wanted to have fun with that this week. Number 30, moving up two spots from last week, the Anaheim Ducks. Ducks are 30th. So the Ducks right now they get back-to-back wins this week, and this is why I say when it comes to the board, it is easy to move up if you're at the bottom, and it's easy to drop if you're at the top. If you have a bad week and you're at the top, it's easy to drop down. If you have a bad week and you're at the bottom, that's where you stay. But again, Anaheim moves up a couple of spots, because right now, yeah, I would place them ahead of Philadelphia and Chicago, which is kind of faint praise, but here we are. Number 29, dropping one spot from where they were last week, the San Jose Sharks. So for the Sharks, they get a point tonight in LA. They've won games here and there, but still, they're really rowing against it. It is clearly not their season, and I'm looking for them to start selling guys probably in the new year. Remember, I think the trade deadline's March 3rd, so we'll start to see some movement, I would think, early January. There will be teams who want to get out ahead of it, and San Jose's phone's going to be ringing. Number 28, another team whose phone's going to be ringing as well, moving up two spots from last week, Arizona. The Coyotes are good at home. Right, with the result tonight, they're still 4-3-1 at home, which isn't bad. Again, comparatively speaking with what was expected from them, 4-3-1's not bad at all. And so for the Coyotes, them being this far up the board, I think they'd be happy with that. And again, before the season started, we pretty much expected Arizona to be at the bottom, but instead, and I know that says Phoenix, it's an old puck. But yeah, they've played a little bit better than expected, and at home, they look pretty good. So even though they lost tonight, I think they were against a more desperate team. Number 27, same spot as last week, the Columbus Blue Jackets. So the Blue Jackets, yes, another one of the mascot pucks, but the Blue Jackets, the season's really unraveled for them. I even considered dropping them below Arizona. I didn't, because today's loss was against Boston, who, when you go into Boston, you're probably going to lose. So yeah, for Columbus, I didn't penalize them for that, but you notice they haven't moved up either. So for Columbus, it's really turned into kind of a disastrous season. Number 26, dropping three spots from last week, Montreal. It does feel like that game against Anaheim at home, that might be what finally popped that bubble, that we've been waiting for them to start to fall off, right? And they haven't been. They've been very competitive. They've been quite good at holding off those losing streaks. And I've even heard that mentioned in commentary, how, the thing that's helped Montreal avoiding that losing streak, it kind of feels like they're on one now. They lose the game tonight against Tampa, and that's after the game against Anaheim, and just it feels like for Montreal things are going in the wrong direction. Number 25, dropping one spot from last week, Vancouver. Yes, that's a brand new puck, and it's not the only brand new puck you're going to see. I didn't get a full set of the reverse retro pucks because on eBay, the seller that has the full set of 32 wants $700 for the full set. No. So While I got the full set on eBay for the other reverse retros, which included this one here, I'm not paying. No, that's ridiculous. With the amount of pucks that I have, I can come up with something fun, and I've got enough reverse retros that I bought from the NHL store. So before anybody asks, I got them from the NHL store. I did have to go through the American one. There's a lot of stuff you can't get on the Canadian one for whatever reason, like we don't have pucks up here or something. But at any rate, Vancouver drops one spot this week. Not a great week, and that's why I'm trying not to talk about it because it's just they get back to 500 and then they drop below. And just the game against Winnipeg again to me says they're not. They just don't have it. That quality you're looking for in a team that's going to go on a roll and turn things around. Vancouver just doesn't seem to have it right now. I do understand who was missing from tonight's lineup though. Number 24, dropping 5 spots from last week, is Calgary. So for the Flames, this season has seemingly got away from them according to some Flames fans, but they're not that far out. So, and I still think the Flames could turn things around, but the odds are getting a little longer for them as the season rolls on. And eventually, the West is going to improve. We're going to see teams go on a run, and it could be at the expense of a team like Calgary. Of course, for Vancouver, they could be that team on a run, but they're sadly coming up short in some of these games. Number 23, moving up 3 spots from last week, no longer in the bottom row, and that's St. Louis. So, yep, I got theirs. I got that puck. It's very yellow. Very, very yellow. Just like the jersey, so it matches. The St. Louis Blues, look at that. It blends right into the wood. I'm glad I showed it to the camera. I'm waiting on all the comments for... I can't see who 23 is. It's the Blues. The Blues are 23. They move up 3 spots. I had considered moving them up 4. I didn't make that adjustment tonight because I thought that was kind of mean to the team that's landed at 22nd on the board. So 23rd for St. Louis. They won a couple of games this week that, it seems like they're ready to turn it in their favor. The Blues should be a playoff team. They have very good forwards. Their goaltending is solid. They have a better defense core than what we've seen so far from them. I'm expecting more from them as the season goes on. Number 22, dropping 8 spots from last week. Yeah, big dramatic shift for Detroit. For the Wings, this is a week that really showed that Detroit still has some work to do. And I mean, we kind of knew that before the season started. There weren't very many people picking the Wings to make the playoffs. But yeah, for Detroit, it's turned in the wrong direction. The schedule's been very tough, and it stays tough through the rest of the month for them. And so for Detroit, it does look like their run as a playoff team above that bar might very well be done. But don't get too discouraged. This is still a team on the right track, and they're still a very good young team. Number 21 also dropping this week from last week. Dropping 4 spots, the Nashville Predators. Nashville, they dug their way out, and it feels like they've got themselves back into a bit of a mess. It's a very yellow puck as well. I ordered myself some yellow ones, but I mean, it's the mustard meth cat, so how could I not have that puck? It just felt like it wouldn't be right not to have that in my collection. But for Nashville, they lost tonight in Colorado. That's a very injury-depleted Colorado. A little healthier than a week ago, sure, but still, that's a game they really needed, and they just didn't get it. So for Nashville, they end up 21st. They've fallen below 500 as well, and we'll see if they get it together and move up to the top half of the board, as was expected before the season started. Number 20, staying in the same spot as last week, the LA Kings. Now, for the Kings, they did survive the scare against San Jose. That game goes to a shootout. They do win it. They did win the game in Boston. That through shootout as well. And so for LA, I kind of feel like they're in the right spot. They do pass Nashville. They do pass Detroit because those teams had really rough weeks. So LA doesn't move down, but they don't move up either because there are teams that pass them. There are 2 teams that pass them, and I think legitimately pass them. I think they're having very good time of it right now. Starting with the team at 19 that moved up 6 spots. That's the Ottawa Senators. I think this is the highest the Senators have been this year. I could just do a quick check here. I think this is the highest they've been. Well, where were they at the start of the season? I had them 24th to start the season. So, yeah, this is... Oh, nope, they were 14th. They have been 14th. So 19th is the second highest they've been this season. It does feel like they're trending in the right direction, and it's about time. They're back to 500 hockey. Again, it's NHL 500, so, true 500 would be 15-15, not 14-14-2. which is technically 16 losses and 14 wins. But either way, if you're a Sens fan and if you're feeling optimistic and thinking, should I be? I think so. I think the goaltending's been doing pretty well. They're on a good roll. They're playing their game. They didn't let the frustration over the, all the advanced stats say you guys should be doing well. Just statistically, you're performing well. You're not getting the goals. That's gone by the wayside right now. It feels like the scoring's picked up. DeBrinket's really getting a lot of points. Clearly, Shadow's excited. And yeah, so for the Ottawa Senators, it feels like the worst may very well be behind them. Number 18, moving up 4 spots from last week, Buffalo. The Buffalo Sabres off to a very good run right now themselves. And so this is showing how the Atlantic things have kind of shifted. Detroit's moved down, Ottawa and Buffalo have moved up. And these were the 3 teams we were wondering which one could end up pushing towards a playoff spot. It's not going to be easy because the top 3 are basically completely off limits. You're not going to see a team in the Atlantic catch Tampa, Toronto, or Boston. So it really is a fight for a wild card spot. But at least they're in the fight, right? While the 2 New York teams have had those spots, now Washington's in there as well. Buffalo's in the mix. They've done quite well for themselves. And as I mentioned during the recap tonight, that game against Arizona, when they got down 2-1, the old Sabres would have just kind of rolled over and made bad mistakes trying to make up for those goals and made it worse. These guys tonight kept it together and they won the game. Number 17, dropping 6 spots from last week. They've dropped 10 spots in the last 2 weeks, and that's Seattle. 2 weeks ago, I was standing here and saying, Seattle, they're in the top row, probably not going to stay here, and they haven't. Schedule are really difficult for them. And it just feels like with Seattle that they were probably punching above their weight just a little bit. And so they end up in the bottom half of the board. Now, if they have a good week this week, they'll bounce right back up. They'll be in the top half. But it does feel like the good times for Seattle, maybe they peaked too soon, right? But again, for Seattle, it really is a matter of this is a team that had 60 points last year. Thank everything that's holy that this year they've been better. But this week really kind of showed how much work is left to do for Seattle this year. I don't think they make the playoffs. I think we're starting to see that fall, and there's teams that could very well pass them quickly here. Number 16, dropping 1 spot from last week, is Florida. Now, Florida wins tonight in New Jersey. What that win in New Jersey did was it pulled them out of the 3rd row. I had them in 18th coming into, I think on Friday I had them in 18th. So they end up in 16th. So they dropped not nearly as much as they could have. So the win in New Jersey could be that turnaround, blah, blah, blah. I've done this so many times this year. I expect Florida to get better, and then doesn't really happen. So the win tonight, should that be the start of something for Florida? Yes, it should. Am I betting on it? No. I want to see consistent game in and game out results. And so maybe it's the start of something. If it is, they'll move up the board. But for right now, that's where they end up. Number 15, moving up 6 spots. So this is the team that's the reason Florida dropped a spot this week. And that's the Washington Capitals. So for the Caps, a very, very strong week for them. That win over Toronto today really kind of cinched it for me. I knew they were going to move up. How much? It becomes 6 spots. And the other interesting thing is over the last couple of games, they haven't needed goals from Ovechkin. They did lose the game against Dallas. I didn't penalize them on that one. Dallas has been playing quite well at points during this last while. And so, and I'm saying at points because there's, in each game I can remember moments that are like, yeah, I don't know how much I trust Dallas either, but Washington moves up to 15th. So they're in the top half of the board. And I think last week I said, I know this looks like a harsh spot for them. I had them in 21st last week and they dropped a spot, but I said they keep playing this way, they'll move up, and there they are. Number 14, dropping 1 spot from last week, but it could be a lot worse, and that's Colorado. The Avalanche, honestly, Nichushkin's getting it back together. Rantanen's been absolutely fantastic. One thing that this could do is once you get Landeskog back and McKinnon back, Rantanen could take that next step as a leader, right? It's great to have a captain, but it's nice to have a leadership group and have guys that everybody trusts. Rantanen showing he can be trusted. Makar's been fantastic, and Georgiev's been quite good. So they drop 1 spot because they get passed by 2 different teams. So while they pass Seattle, 2 other teams pass them. So that's I think something that people miss out on when I do the power rankings. The fact that their team actually passed another one and other teams passed theirs, I guess, just The focus will be on the team they cheer for more than anything else. Number 13, which I understand. I do get it. Number 13, dropping one spot from last week, Edmonton. Now, losing against Anaheim could very well have caused Edmonton to be broken down a little bit more than that, especially after the loss against St. Louis. But the loss against St. Louis, I didn't penalize them for, and the loss against Anaheim, they outshot them 22-2 in the third period. Dostal just looked really good. Dostal's the reason that Anaheim isn't last on the board. He is stealing them games. So for Edmonton, I'm not busting them down yet. But this coming week, they're definitely on notice that if we see more losses, they'll be busted down on the board. Absolutely. Yes. But for today, I just felt like, nah, not doing that. Number 12, dropping 2 spots from last week, the New York Islanders. The Islanders, it's consistency. The consistency, like tonight in Vegas, that's great. There was some good fortune with the win in Vegas tonight, though, too. There was definitely some good fortune. There was some good goaltending by the Islanders. That's where Shadow decides he's had enough of that. So I let him out, and that means that I'm catless in this room at this time. Cat trees and no cats makes me look even crazier. So the Islanders at 12, again, it's a consistency thing. So the loss in Arizona is one side of it, and then the win in Vegas, I have no idea what to expect with the New York Islanders. And so they end up at 12th because there are a couple of teams that I felt are right now playing more consistently better than the New York Islanders. Otherwise, they would have stayed in 10th if that wasn't the case. So at number 11, moving up 7 spots from last week, the Rangers. Yeah, the Rangers seem to have gotten it together. This has been a very up and down season for the Rangers. The Rangers overall should be a playoff team. They should be a dangerous team. They're finally winning some games with Halak in net, which is good because you don't want to overplay Shesterkin. And they're getting some really good play up and down the lineup, and that's key. Barclay Goodrow's been quite good for them. So, the Rangers end up moving up, and I think they've won 6 in a row currently. They're playing quite well. Number 10, also playing very well, moving up 6 spots from last week, so almost as big a move as the Rangers, and that's Minnesota. Now, what's impressive about this is that, remember, I do update this every day, that, I look at this on Saturday and go, wow, Minnesota and the Rangers really made big moves this week. Because I don't actually keep a paper track of where everybody is at the end of every day, because that'd be crazy. But yeah, Minnesota had an excellent week. Really good play. Of course, Kaprizov's a big part of it, but Fleury's been playing quite well, and they're getting production all over. I love Mason Shaw's game too. I think he's quite good. I've always, since Connor Dewar came into their lineup, I've been a big fan of his. And now Hartman coming back. Yeah, Minnesota looks like they're firing on all cylinders and could be a dark horse to end up winning that division. To be honest, I think that division's still wide open. Number 9, one of the reasons that division is wide open, dropping 2 spots from last week, is Dallas. The Dallas Stars, it has been a journey for them around the top 10. Sometimes 10th, sometimes 5th, sometimes 7th. Right now they're 9th, so they're out of the top row. It's the full 60-minute game that seems to be elusive for Dallas. So while I'm impressed with the wins that they get, they're not as frequent as they were. Robertson's scoring has dropped off. Wedgwood's game tonight wasn't probably quite where you'd want it to be either. So there are some concerns with the Dallas Stars right now, and that, to me, is what drops them out of the top row. Number 8, dropping 2 spots from last week, the Winnipeg Jets. Now, for Winnipeg, the game against Vancouver I thought was more damning of Vancouver than necessarily praising of Winnipeg, but also in Winnipeg's case, they just got passed by 2 teams that I feel right now are ahead of Winnipeg, and it's not really meant as a slam to the Jets. I still think the Jets are a good bet to win that division, but Minnesota's there now as a dark horse. That is 3 teams in a row from the Central Division, and that division's getting kind of tightly bunched up. So for Winnipeg, that win in Vancouver was key for them because they knew that Dallas only had a point from tonight's game against Carolina. And so, yeah, we'll see how things go for Winnipeg in the upcoming weeks. They're still a top row team, just dropped a couple of spots. Number 7, moving up 1 spot from last week, Carolina. So the Canes, a team that won in overtime tonight because they were against Dallas. When that game was going into overtime, I thought, well, this is going to be interesting because both of these teams struggle with overtimes. And Turned out Dallas struggled more than Carolina. Carolina gets the puck, they put the puck in the net, they win the game. And I'm sure in the locker room after they said, "Hey guys, we should do that next time too. This winning in overtime feels better." But for Carolina, if they had more of those overtime wins rather than the overtime losses, their record would be better. And honestly, they'd probably be further up the board as a result, because that should be how that works. But they're still there. I consider them a dark horse for the Cup. People still talk about them like a favorite. I still see them as kind of a dark horse. But in general, things are going pretty darn well right now for the Carolina Hurricanes. They could very well end up winning that division. There are 3 teams now in that race for that division. Could go to anybody. And the reason it could go to anybody is because of team number 6, dropping 4 spots from last week, the New Jersey Devils. The Devils, the game tonight against Florida, to me, I don't know that that's the most alarming of the losses, but I keep waiting for that big push from New Jersey. And I think what's happened is that teams have started to find out how to counter New Jersey's attack, how to counter their speed. And it feels like there's a game plan now that New Jersey's going to have to overcome if they're going to get back on the kind of streak they were on before. They've still got an excellent record. They're still going to be a playoff team. But the question becomes one of, are they going to win the division? Are they going to be a favorite? Or are they going to end up being number 2 or number 3 in the division? Potentially a wild card with the way the Rangers have been playing lately. And then end up being an underdog. And I think, honestly, for New Jersey, they have enough skill, but there's still a lot of inexperience with that skill as well. And so I'm not entirely surprised to see New Jersey going through the struggles they're going through right now. But I do expect them to come through it on the other end, probably a better team. Number 5, an up and down team too, and that's Vegas. Vegas had an up and down week, and so at the end of the week, they're in the same spot they were at the start of the week. Because it's a very up and down team. The interesting thing is when the Kings won their game tonight, Jim Fox said, well, Vegas has just run off and hid with the division. Not really. Now LA's 6 points back of Vegas. So if Vegas loses a couple more games, really the question mark for Vegas is they're fantastic on the road. They're mediocre at home. They have to fix that home record. If they do, they could end up being first on the board. But that home record could really hurt them. Because think about this. Vegas wins their division. Well, the first 2 games are at home. Let's say they lose both of the first 2 games at home. They have to fix their home game. Otherwise, winning the division could hurt them. Maybe you want to finish 3rd in the division, and that's not going to happen. Now, with as mediocre as this division's record has been, they could win by default, which are the 2 best words in the English language. Number 4, moving up 5 spots from last week, is Pittsburgh. So for all of the talk about Pittsburgh and how THG holds Pittsburgh down and you can't stand Pittsburgh and that's why you won't move them up, it's a gradual move up the board. And then what helped them is that there are teams that in the top row had a rough week, including New Jersey, and I felt like Pittsburgh was better than Carolina, better than Winnipeg, and better than Vegas, and so they're in the number 4 spot. So I'm sure the comments will turn into, actually they should be number 1, because that's how that works. But yeah, Pittsburgh number 4. Yes, that's the new reverse retro puck for them as well. I had to get that one because Robo Penguin. I have to have a Robo Penguin puck. Why wouldn't I have a Robo Penguin puck? I do have a Robo Penguin puck anyways, but I don't have that one, so I had to have that one. I needed multiple Robo Penguins. You never know when you need multiple Robo Penguins until there's an emergency and you don't have one. So if you have multiple, it's less of a chance that in an emergency situation you're not going to be able to find one. I don't know what the emergency is going to be, but at least I have multiples. Number 3, dropping 2 spots from last week, is Toronto. So if you're of the mind that I jinx a team by putting them first on the board, I guess this week would be a good example for Toronto. They lost back-to-back games in regulation against the Rangers and then against the Capitals. And so Toronto drops. This was not their best week, obviously, but they're still 3rd. The problem is if they lose 2 out of 3 this coming week. I don't know how many games they're playing this week. I'm just using this as an example. If they lose 2 out of 3 this week, odds are they fall below Pittsburgh, maybe below Vegas, or New Jersey if New Jersey gets things going as well. So for Toronto, not panicking, obviously, and I would imagine that the media will be all over this loss against Washington. And for media people who've been waiting and drooling at the idea of what's going to happen when Toronto goes through a tough spot, if this is a tough spot, okay, but as a fan of that team down there, it's not a tough spot, honestly, really. 19-7-6 is still a pretty good record. So Yeah, this is a team that's had their struggles this week, so they dropped to third, but overall Toronto's still in good shape. Number 2, and moving up 2 spots from last week, is Tampa. You knew I was going to have that puck, didn't you? So number 2 is the Tampa Bay Lightning, and they're playing some of the best hockey in the league. And so I don't see any reason why Tampa Bay shouldn't be number 2. And the way that they just kind of had their way with Montreal tonight was impressive. Even though Montreal is lower on the board, it's just Tampa Bay's been playing their game. They continue to do that tonight. And really, they are one of the best teams in the league. I would be terrified of playing them in the first round. That could end up being Toronto's job this year again. Which I know it's too early in the season for that, but I know at some point soon we're going to be having the argument about the playoff seedings and all of that, and the fact that Toronto's reward for finishing second in the division would be to play Tampa Bay again. Their only hope would be to catch Boston, pass Boston, and make Boston and Tampa Bay, destroy each other, which could still happen. We're still early enough in the season, obviously, that Toronto, who aren't that far back when it comes to the division lead, could very well end up winning that division as well. That's a possibility. Any of these 3 teams could, because number 1 on the board, going up 2 spots, Boston. So how good is the Atlantic? And I ask that as a rhetorical question because we can see 1, 2, and 3, all Atlantic Division teams. Boston had a good week. They did. I know they lost in a shootout against LA. That was a game that they probably should have won, and so didn't penalize them on that one. And again, they didn't lose in regulation this week. Their record is absolutely fantastic, so Boston moves back up to number 1. So I saw some comments last week about, it's too reactionary to move Boston out of first. The week before this one, they didn't have as good a week as they did this week, and they end up back in first place. So Boston's back to number 1. We'll see what happens next week. But for now, the power rankings are done for another week. So I do try to change up the pucks because it's something fun to do. And let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. And no, I didn't get the Pooh Bear puck for Boston. It wasn't available when I ordered them. It's still not on the NHL site, last I checked. And so I miss out on a Pooh Bear puck. I'm sure I can find one on eBay somewhere, probably for a lot of money. Probably not worth getting at that price. But at any rate, I'm still happy with what we got. All right. Let me know your thoughts, as always, in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for all your support. I'll talk to you again soon.